building applications means that we have to build something with the user in mind. So we can build simple applications to very complex applications. Now, SwiftUI relies heavily on a structured way of building our user interface by breaking down our user interface into manageable pieces. That way we can compose those smaller pieces into independent views. What I mean by that is as follows. So imagine we're building an iOS application. We have our screen here and we want to put a logo there and we can put some sort of a text to the right. Now this works fine, but a better way would be to actually enclose the logo and company into what we call a stack. So a stack essentially is a container that again gives us that flexibility of composing our user interfaces into smaller pieces of views that we can then move them around and do sort of things. Okay. Now, in this case here, you can see that the logo is to the left and to the right we have our company. So this is what we call the H stack. Okay, H stands for horizontal, meaning anything that goes inside of our H stack will always be horizontally laid out. And obviously, if we have a horizontal stack, that means we should also have, yes, you guessed it, we will have a vertical stack. So that in this case will be a V stack. Now, stacks are the main components of building complex user interfaces using SwiftUI. All right, so we talked about stack, we talked about the horizontal stack, we talk about the vertical stack, but there's another stack called Z stack. What a Z stack does is it allows us to actually put things on top of each other. So for instance, we have a view, let's say a logo, we can actually overlay with a company, which we can then overlay in the back with another view or a stack or whatever else we are trying to put on the screen. Now, the idea of a Z stack is that everything that is put first will be in the back, meaning the last thing that we put on the screen. Let's say we have three texts that we're putting on top of each other. So the first thing is going to be in the back, the second thing is going to be in front of the back, and so forth. So the last thing we added, it's going to be in front of everything. So there is indeed an order of whatever we're putting on the screen. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look in code so we can see the differences here. So back to our code editor here, we last had this text hello there, and we add a few modifiers here to change the font to a large title, color, green, and bold, and so forth. I hope you were able to add other modifiers here so you can see what else can you do with the text. Okay, so we talked about stacks. So to create a stack is very simple. Let's start with a vertical stack. Let's say V. Like this, and you can see that we have the option here of V stack. Just hit enter, and of course we're going to put inside of a curly braces here to say that whatever it's inside V stack is going to be, of course, vertically aligned. Now this will not do much. I'm going to go ahead and run this because you're not going to see any difference at all because we only have one item inside of our V stack. However, the moment we actually add another item here, let's just put text because that's the easiest thing. And I'm going to say another item like that, save and run. You'll notice something very cool will happen. Now we see that these two are vertical aligned, meaning that now we have V stack, so everything we add inside of our V stack, it's going to be vertically aligned. So we can put as many items as we want, as many little views as we want, and you'll see there will always be vertically aligned or stacked. Okay. Now the beauty here is that I can always, because remember all of these are actually views, I can always come down here and do some other modifiers here. So I can say, for instance, foreground, or I can say background color. I'm going to say color dot gray. Save and run. Now we notice the whole background is going to be gray. Now notice not the whole background, the whole screen, but yet the background of our V stack. This is how you can see that indeed our V stack contains all of these text inside there. But the other thing we can do here is with V stack, we can actually pass a few parameters. Now notice the moment you hit enter, there's alignment. I can align whatever is inside of our stack. Now there's a few options here for our alignment. I'm going to get rid of all of this. If you go ahead and say dot, notice it's going to give us center, leading, and trailing. Center, as the name implies, it means everything inside of our V stack is going to be centered. If I hit enter here, let me go ahead and get rid of spacing for now because we don't need it for now at least. I'm going to focus on one at a time. Okay, let's run. You can see now everything is centered. Whatever is inside now is all centered. Now, if I get rid of this again, just leave it empty or just like that, let's go ahead and see. You notice it all shows the same thing again. The reason why is because if you just put a VStack and pass nothing or remove these like that, the default is always centered. So that's why if you don't put anything, it's just going to put everything center. Now let's go back and put back what we had. I'm going to say dot center again. We can also pass the spacing within the items inside of our VStack. So I can pass a number here. I can say I want the spacing to be 23. I'm going to delete the content like that. We don't need to worry about that. And if you run, notice it's going to be center, but the spacing is going to be a little bit bigger. Look at that. Now the spacing between all of these items vertically is going to be of 23 units or pixels. Let's change this to leading. Leading mean everything is going to be leading to the left. So it's going to move to the left. All these should be to the left. Let's save this and give it a run and see. And voila, you can see now they all went to the left. The spacing is still the same. Let's change to trailing. You will realize that this is the opposite of leading, which means you should go all to the right. And voila, everything went to the right. Now, if we change this, let me go ahead perhaps and copy this. Do something like that. And I'm going to go ahead and comment this out. Okay, so we have the, I'm going to change some things here. Let's change this to horizontal stack. Notice we're going to have a little problem here because when it comes to horizontal, we're not going to have any trailing or heading because everything is going to be horizontally aligned. So we can't do that. So, but I can come down here and do dot again. You're going to see there's now bottom, center, first text baseline, last text baseline, and top. Okay. So if I go to bottom, what do you think is going to happen? Let's save this and run. There we go. You can see now they're all horizontally aligned and to the bottom. Very good. And I'm going to change the spacing to about 12. Okay, so everything is horizontal. All right, let's change this to top. You notice now they all move to the top there. Now you can see that this hello there, it's kind of indifferent in a way. Not really. Let's change this to a, let's see that, let's say none, just to see, so it's not big or small. Now you notice that the moment that happened, a few things, we made the hello there to have a standard font size, it's not as big or anything. You notice now that our H stack is just using the space that we need, meaning it got smaller because we don't need to have the bigger space if everything can fit in a smaller space. So this is actually a good thing. The idea is that everything that we put inside of our user interface can only use enough space or can only use the space that it needs. You can force things if you want to do so. So if you change, as you saw, the font to be a little bit bigger, of course, the whole space will also try to accommodate everything, which is good. So everything is flexible. Okay, let's go to center and see what's going to happen. So at center, of course, everything is going to be in the middle, but look something here. If let's change this to about 45, so make the spacing in between really big. What do you think is going to happen? Look at that, it's growing. Right? So now we have these 45 spaces in between. Now, the other thing we can do, we can make our H stack a little bit larger. We can actually do that. Remember, we can go outside. This is outside of our H stack. We are now trying to access a different modifier. I'm going to call a frame modifier. A frame modifier allows us to frame or change the size of our stack. So in this case here, we can pass a height or width and height. I'm going to start with width of about, let's say 300. And a height of also about 240. Let's save and run. Look at that. So what happened here is that the width is a little bit smaller because we said 300. If we don't put the width, what happens is that it takes enough space. So all these alignments, top, bottom, center, and so forth, they become more apparent when we actually have, say, a view such an image, and then we have text, and then we have a circle and so forth. Then we can be able to actually see how everything fits together. But hopefully by now you understand a little bit more about H stack and V stack. Try to understand by changing certain values here and see what happened on screen here. All right, perfect. So in the next video, we're going to tap into the Z index.